So, hi everyone. Super happy to see everyone, especially since I'm still trying to get back to some sort of functioning health. And I miss so many lives and so many events, but I'm working on getting back. And this is my first work event in few weeks now. I've been sick for a few weeks, so super happy to be with all of you. And we have here Gabby from Bucharest, from Romania, and Jennifer from UK. And we have Curry from Minnesota. And I know Daniel is coming from Canada. And so many different people. So super happy to see everyone. I'm sure Olga is here. Probably Canada, I'm guessing. But super happy to see all of you. Thank you for joining. So, as we're getting together, if somebody hasn't yet introduced yourself, tell us where you join us from. It's as always an international crowd, and I'm joining you from Galena, Ohio. And tell me, what's your drink of choice for this happy hour? I am drinking tea. I'm required to drink something every 30 minutes. I was almost passed out when doctor said that, but I'm trying to stick up to the amount of drinks. And my friend the fox is drinking some wine, it looks like, but I'm just drinking some herbal tea. And curry is with bone broth. Yes, that's what I did on the very first happy hour in October. October happy hour was about becoming a TEDx speaker, and November happy hour was about resistance to change, more subtle aspects of resistance to change. And today will be super practical because we'll look at only one exercise I use a lot. And Jennifer is drinking water, and Daniel is drinking coffee, black with water. Great. Olga is here from Ljubljana, hot vitamin mix. This is the best place. David, you are the winner of this little competition. This is Christmas, right? For those of you celebrating, eggnog is the way to go. So those of you who are celebrating, half of my family is Catholic. So we had a wonderful moment yesterday and day before yesterday. And I was raised Russian Orthodox. So our Christmas is in January 7th. So we end up celebrating 2 Christmases, 2 New Years, and we're done about January 15th. So that's, I take that. I think that's a good option. So a little bit about the happy hours. I will start sharing the PowerPoint. This idea of a happy hour showed up about a couple of months ago, and the reason we started with the happy hours is because our reinvention community started growing, and it didn't feel like we were connecting enough, that there was an opportunity to connect more. And it was all about how can we have more in-depth conversations than Facebook Live or some other mediums that we use. So that's how it started. And it's a very simple idea that we have this big growing community around the idea of reinvention. So in 2019, as we were celebrating the end of a year, we were so surprised to see how many events were taking place in how many countries. So many people around the world held a reinvention event. And in those events, this is not a full number, but the number we were able to capture and verify, we've touched 86,191 people. These were workshops and talks and reinvention labs, and it's all over the world. And some of you hosted those events. So absolutely love all of this energy that is happening around the world. But of course, some of these events happen independently without an ability of international get-together. So Reinvention Happy Hour is a way to do a simple get-together internationally without any cost of travel or anything else. And I'm also extremely happy and honored to see how many chief reinvention officers were born in this 1 year. So again, this particular format, Reinvention Happy Hour, is a way for us to share what we do as chief reinvention officers and what tricks and solutions we discover, and also what mistakes we make and share those mistakes and victories with all of us and learn from each other. So that's how happy hours were born. And now the question for you, if you can give me a little bit of insights in the chat box, let me know what brings you here. I just shared what brings me here. What brings you here? What questions you hope to have answered here in this reinvention happy hour? And if we cannot, then it will be in the next one. And while you're typing those in the chat box, just a little bit of the format. I will speak maybe about 20-25 minutes at most. I'll try to keep it short today specifically because it's still a bit hard for me to speak for a long time. And then we usually pass the baton. So whoever is moved to speak gives me a sign and I just pass it on. And we had many people speak in the first couple of happy hours on different topics, sharing their secrets or their advice. In the first one, when we spoke about TEDx and how to become a speaker, we had one of the organizers who spoke a little bit. So after about 20-25 minutes, I'll pass it on to you, and I'm sure you have some amazing experiences to share as well. But in the comments, let me know what brings you here. And David says, trying to find a non-threatening way to introduce clients to a relatively stable temporary environment. And then Jennifer said, connecting with like-minded people and understanding more how to work with reinvention. Beautiful. Olga says, excited to see the exercise and see how to apply it, both on personal and company level. Absolutely. And Ken said, I am always looking for new tools for smoothing ongoing changes. Great. And Daniel says, no questions, but looking forward to hearing about this practical exercise to use with clients. Right. And Marita says, I like the plan topic, how to kill your company. Great. So I will try to give you insights on this particular one exercise, but also if we can touch wider topics, that will be absolutely an opportunity. And Jorge says, connecting with people who look to reinvent constantly. So you're in the right place then, Jorge. And just a little bit of how we got to this word reinvention. So many of you know me. I used to be a professor. I'm a recovering academic. All of us are recovering academics, never quite recover. We relapse and we write and research and do other things. And 12 years ago, I started a company together with my husband. And we specialize on helping companies that are in serious trouble. And for first 7 years or so, we didn't have a website or a business card, and we didn't have a word that described what in the world do we do. Until I was cornered by a wonderful, really amazing professional, Mark Levy, who specializes on positioning, and he wanted to help me figure out the right words to explain our position on the market space or intellectual space. And he kept telling me, so if your job was a full-time position in a company, what would it be? And I kept pushing back, saying, well, it's not strategy because there's a lot of implementation. And it's not change management because there is a lot of strategy and foresight, a lot of content. It's not just process. And it's not transformation because the word transformation is overused, and also it doesn't have this result, this opposite upswing. And it's not any other word. It's definitely not innovation because a lot of it is also preserving the old, not just the new. So I kept going in circles and circles and getting very anxious and a little bit angry until it came out of me. And I said, Chief Reinvention Officer. And he was quiet for a little bit. And then he said, you should buy the URL today. And that's how the term Chief Reinvention Officer was born. So the whole idea of the field of reinvention and how is it not different from all other fields, but more unifying, is the idea that every one of these independent fields, strategy, foresight, innovation, design thinking, agile and scrum, transformation, change management, organizational development, they're all great and they're all doing a good job with this specific area, but they're no longer good enough for the speed of change we're facing unless we connect them. And the whole idea of reinvention is the umbrella concept that it's all about embracing change and reinventing ahead of the curve before we're forced to reinvent, using all these different tools. And one of the tools I will speak about today is this exercise that we use a lot called Kill Your Company exercise. And this particular exercise is unique because it can be used at different stages or with different pillars of reinvention. And it can be used as a preventative measure and as a acute disease measure. It can be used as a mindset, long-term kind of in-depth work measure, very much about mindset and culture, but it also can be used very much as a hands-on, let's fix the problem, let's fight the fire right now measure. So I love this exercise because it has so many applications and it has many variations. So I put together on the slides a few words of how you can vary the setup, but it's just few. There are many, many more variations, and I would love to hear your variations and so on. But first, to speak a little bit of why this is so specifically good for this unifying idea of reinvention that connects so many areas of expertise. Remember the 3 pillars of reinvention that we've developed over years, and those 3 are making sure we are very good at anticipating change. So here, the skills and the tools we use are all about trend watching, foresight, scenario planning, strategy, mindsetting. These are the tools that we use for this pillar. And this is usually very much a preventative. This is about noticing not only what is shifting, but also when is it time to move. You remember the speed of change being so quick. The last research I shared in the last reinvention happy hours, we are required to reinvent every 3 years or less in a corporate setting, whether it's product reinvention, process reinvention, business model reinvention. And the most difficult question for most businesses is not what to reinvent or even how to reinvent, it's when. Because if you reinvent too early, the economics are not there. You will kill your company economically. You will be losing money because you moved too early. But if you reinvent too late, the data shows that your chances of ever recovering to the peak of your performance are only 10%. So the when question can best be answered as an anticipating change measure if we have strong systematic approach to anticipating change. And good news is that Kill the Company exercise can be used and is a great measure for trend watching because it helps you notice potential threat before the threat emerges. The second pillar of reinvention is designing change. And here we use a lot of tools from design thinking, some from change management, especially large system change. We have more people that keep joining, so you will hear those noises. These are people joining. So we have for this pillar, designing change, a lot of tools that we use in change management in large systems change, like appreciative inquiry, but also a lot from innovation and design thinking and startup fields. So things like prototyping, testing, things like minimum viable product all come here. And Kill Your Company exercise can be used as a starting point, as a springboard into designing change pillar. And then finally, none of it makes sense. None of it actually matters if there is no strong implementation skills and the strong implementation systems. And I was thinking about it only yesterday and today. I had a kind of a fight with an executive of a very large corporation I'm working with. And this particular executive, we were talking about whether the company has a strong balance between the effort to run the existing core business and the effort to create a new business. So this run and change, these two things usually cannot happen simultaneously, because when you're running an operation, urgent will always kill important. And the urgent KPIs and the immediate KPIs and performance immediately will always kill future potential. So in this particular company, most of the C-suite people, so chief operations officer, chief HR officer, chief marketing officer, they're also focused on the run part of the business, that they completely ignore the change part of business. And we had this big fight, and he says, come on, we have it covered. We have this whole department that is looking at the scenarios and strategic directions and coming up with new options. And I said, absolutely, it's great they are, just nobody's implementing. They're generating all these different scenarios and there's absolutely no implementation capacity, which at this point, ideas are commodities. It used to be the time where it was rare to find a golden idea. Right now, Google it, you will have 25 golden ideas. The problem is implementation. So without implementation, there is nothing with reinvention. And this particular exercise can also be used in the middle of the change as a kind of boost and focus method of implementation, or an addition to your implementation efforts. So what am I talking about? Most of you heard of this exercise at my last 2019 masterclass. And by the way, we are getting ready to work, we are already working as soon as I fully recover on 2020 masterclasses, which will be held at the end of January and early February. So get your handbooks ready and get your time ready, because we're working on this massively new masterclasses. But this 2019 masterclasses, I was sharing some insights, and one of the examples that I used was Kill the Company exercise. And it's been such a popular slide, this particular slide you see from the masterclass, that so many people ask me to say a few more words of how exactly it's run. And this exercise has been used by companies like HBO, but also by communities like one of the cities in Texas here in the US uses as Kill the Community exercise to come up with a better picture of what can disrupt the community and how it can be prevented from going down. So what exactly is Kill Your Company exercise? It's very simple. The idea is to spend a focused, committed, systematic time to invent all the different ways our company or organization or community can be destroyed. And the interesting thing about it is that many of you who work with change and transformation know that we have such high level of resistance to change in business or in beyond business and nonprofit world, that to wake people up to the need, and especially preventative need to change, is a huge, huge effort, is a massive effort. And here, instead of an external force, whether it's a department inside the company or a consultant, being the wake-up call, here the employees themselves are a wake-up call, because it's them who are coming up with different ways the company can be killed. So how does it work specifically? So first of all, the setup. We've done this as short as about 2.5 hours. That's, I would say, is the absolute minimum, and a little bit on the short side. And we've done it to as far as 2-day experience with a really active brainstorm afterwards around more proactive measures. So not just how to kill the company, but also how to prevent all of this bad stuff from happening. So in terms of a setup, anywhere between 2.5 hours and 2 days seem to work well. And in terms of the participants, we've done very different variations. So option one is using employees only, so engaging employees only. Number two is using employees and then also some external stakeholders. This would be first and foremost suppliers and customers. Those are the two groups of stakeholders that are probably most knowledgeable in your weak points aside from yourself. They might be noticing something upstream the business and downstream the business that you're not aware of. The suppliers might know something about the supplier of the supplier of the supplier that can disrupt your business, that by the time it hits you, it will be too late. And the same with the customers. The customer of the customer of the customer might have a new preference or new demand that you won't know until it's too late. So this would be the two groups of stakeholders that I would first think about. But there's also regulators, there's also local community, there's also other type of partners that you might invite as in this organization. And finally, we often invite some group of students, whether high school students, we went as far as middle school students, or college students. And these are usually people who know nothing about your company. And that fresh eye, that fresh energy helps a lot with noticing threats and opportunities that most of us who are knowledgeable about business might overlook, because we kind of are too convenient and we get short with the ideas, and we get a lot of I guess prejudgments about our business after we work in it for some years. So short time to 2 days. And in terms of participants, it can be a different combination depending on the risk levels you're open to and your teams are open to. Naturally, a lot of executives are afraid to open the doors to external stakeholders. So it might take a little bit of convincing. And there's maybe some sensitive confidential information you don't want to open up. But generally speaking, the more diverse group you will have, the better. So I, of course, always advocate for option 3, but I can understand that it may not be possible, it may not be safe, and you might have to go with option 1 or option 2. Let me see what comments we have. So Nevan is here to ignite the reinvention spark in my team. And Jorge says, is this exercise something that could be called creative distraction? Absolutely. So this is an exercise to imagine destroying your company before somebody else destroying it. And it makes it into a more less threatening, more playful way to think about risks. Essentially, this is all about brainstorming potential risks and turning them into opportunities. But because you're doing it in a competitive, fun way, one, it's your employees who are opening up the doors to exploring the risks and moving more openly to change. And it's also competitive and fun. So you reduce the threat and resistance to the topic itself. So once you have the participants, in terms of running the competition, you also have a few options. And the competition is about coming up with the best way to kill our company. So this is the setup. You are giving your groups, you divide them into small groups, and you're giving them an assignment for the best way to kill your company. And here you have option in terms of how you set up your groups. Sometimes we do mixed groups, so we do random assignments, or we do non-random but very diverse mix-up assignments. If we know the group very well and we know who usually hates whom, and it may be not personal, maybe sales always hates the operations, so we put them together. Maybe there is people who don't talk to each other enough and we put them together. Or sometimes it's a completely random assignment. A different option, that's option 2 around groups, is to have focus groups. So specifically have a point of view of sales, a point of view of operations, a point of view of external suppliers or partners or customers. And there are benefits and minuses of both. So if your weak point in a company is integration, and you can see that there is not enough dialogue and the company is too siloed, and you need to integrate it, I would advise using mixed groups. If you see that the company is well integrated and there is a flow of communication and partnerships and decision making through the company, then I would go for focused, because sometimes we get so used to our point of view of our reference that we don't notice a completely different reference. So we think that everything is well in operations or everything is completely perfect in sales or somewhere else. And having a very focused perspective from that area might open up something for our area or increase the depth of understanding for the whole system as a whole. Olga is back. That's wonderful. Welcome back, Olga. In terms of the assignment, the overall premise of the assignment is come up with the best way to kill our company. That's the overall premise. But you can modify this assignment and make it as open-ended or as focused and concrete as you want. So we've done it as simple as this one sentence. Your task is to come up with the best way to kill our company. And sometimes we give more structure, come up with at least 3 ways to kill a company. And sometimes we go with super structured. So when we want an in-depth industry analysis, in-depth analysis of potential disruptive forces, we use things like Porter's 5 forces model. And if you want to Google Porter's 5 forces models, you will see immediately that it's an idea about different directions where the threat comes from. So the 5 forces of Porter is, one is suppliers, that where the threat comes from. Of course, buyers, where it can come from. Potential threat of substitutes. So these are not direct competitors, but somebody who could substitute. So you're not tracking them right now. It could be your direct competition, and it could be completely new entrant, the way Apple iTunes was a complete new entrant for the traditional music recording industry. So sometimes we do it super structured and give a requirement that you need to look from 5 dimensions and present the risks from 5 dimensions, or even other structures. We use the 7S model. We use many different models in the past, or sometimes it's a super open-ended or somewhere in between. Again, the choices all depend on where you feel the need inside the company. If the company has a very robust, very systematic approach to trend watching and to industry analysis, and has maybe an economics unit that really pays attention, or research unit that pays attention to potential threats, or risk management unit that is outside focused, then having in-depth research is not as necessary. It's more about using that information in a creative way. But if you're missing that information, you probably need to do some in-depth research on what's happening in alternative spaces, what's happening with our direct competition, what's happening with our suppliers, what's happening with our customers, what's happening with our potential substitutes or new entrants. Is there a particular technology out there that might make our product or our business obsolete in the recent future? It really depends on where you see a missing link in your company. And finally, the simple part of the exercise is complete. So the groups work anywhere between 1 hour to a full day. If you're giving very structured assignment where they need to do a lot of research, that probably giving them overnight is a good idea. The groups present the results, and then you have 2 options. You probably have more than 2 options, but 2 options that are most important ones. One, you want to do a part 2 of the event where you immediately flow into some sort of facilitated discussion on what should be preventative action steps. So if you had 6 groups and they all presented their best way to kill the company, and you see there's a common thread, or there are 2 or 3 key points that are clearly actionable, that can be acted on, you can facilitate a vote, a creative vote with a lot of discussion, a simple vote, and in that vote see which points or which threats seem to be most pressing, most important and urgent. And from there, have a discussion in a different methods. And all of you are very experienced facilitators, so you can use different methods of how that can be structured on what should be the action steps coming out of this event, with as far as specific assignments, specific responsibilities, specific timelines. A second option, especially if you've done a lot of in-depth research that is new, let's say you run this for 2 days, you gave the assignment, people did a 1 day of in-depth research, they presented very in-depth information, there's more to think about. Then you can put together a small team representative from different groups who would put together all the inputs, see what are common threats and what are common themes, and present with the ideas of what to do next. And it can be a follow-up project, program, so it can be another event, and so on. So many different formats, many different options. I will stop here, and I want to hear your reactions, your questions, and so on. So let me see in the comments if you would like to ask some questions, or you can, or you want to offer a comment. Let me know, and I will unmute you and bring you to the front of the camera to see what might be the question, or what might be a potential thing that we can do to answer your question. So give me some sort of sign that you have a question or a comment, or you're kind of thinking out loud how to use this in your setting, and I'm happy to answer. You can either type your question, or you can give me a sign that you have a comment, and I will bring you forward. Okay. So Daniel says, can you give us some examples without naming names of a company who've used this successfully? So a few examples. Construction material company was really thinking about different new directions of change, and of course, this particular company was doing fine. They were, in terms of performance, are doing very well. So all these ideas that you hear from me a lot in terms of reinventing before you hit the decline, were just not landing on grateful ears in this company, because employees kept saying, why do we need to change? Everything is great. The numbers are great. You are constantly pushing us further. You are not being kind, or you're not being respectful, and on and on and on. And we use this exercise to wake the company up in a fun, easy way, and get them all on board. So we specifically worked on mixed groups and done a longer experience. And the company was able to generate a whole bunch of new ideas on potential substitutions for their construction material that they were producing right now, especially because the employees, especially production employees, have not paid significant attention to things like 3D printing of homes that is showing up more and more, where even if construction material is necessary, it needs to show up in a completely new form. So if you're 3D printing a house, this particular company was producing many different construction materials. One of them was insulation. Yeah, so even if you produce an insulation, it's still necessary, but in a 3D printed home, the insulation material should be delivered in a different way for the 3D printer feed, or built inside the 3D printer if you're printing one wall and then putting insulation another wall. So this company was able to bring the potential threats to the middle ground of the organization, middle management and down. And this is where a lot of the initiatives got stuck initially, because people just didn't viscerally experience the potential threat. And now that the groups uncovered the threat of 3D printing, or any other, there were some other threats that were uncovered, suddenly it was the employees from the middle management and lower who were saying, oh my God, we need to rethink completely our offering. And since we see a lot of it is the future, if we want to stay successful at insulation, we need to think about insulation for 3D printed homes and other prefabricated homes and other trends that we're not paying attention to right now. So hopefully that's a good example for you, Daniel. But I used it in the mining business that, you know, sorry about this. This bronchitis pneumonia business is still lingering around. I use it in digital business that I'm consulting a lot right now. So it's quite heavy, not only in manufacturing business. David says, sometimes I suggest that a new competitor comes into the market with only 50% of the client organization and put them out of business in less than 3 years. How did they do it? He is to avoid normal incremental thinking. And David is correcting himself. Meant to say 50% of the client organization's resources. Yes. So what David meant is that you have a competitor who comes into your very established business, and this competitor has not even half of what you have. So half people, maybe half financial resources, maybe half patents or anything else that you see as assets, and somehow they beat your butt. How do they do that? And it definitely comes from a fresh perspective. It also comes from hunger, to be super honest. I work with a lot of old established businesses, and hunger is just not there. The issue with hunger, with this zest for life, the zest for more, it's a mindset issue. So the reason why I love this particular exercise is I think it wakes all of us up. And imagine if you do that for your own career, right? For your own profession. And I dare you on this weekend, on this holiday weekend, to do a little exercise for yourself, right? So this is your career, you as a service provider. What can kill your career? And it's surprising how many things you can notice if you look from the perspective of the customer, you look from the perspective of a supplier. You don't look from your eyes, but you put yourself in the shoes of somebody in your ecosystem who is using your services or your career. And it's a surprising thing that a lot of it comes from mindset or from perspective, not from resources. Resources are rarely a winning factor, surprisingly. And I'm working with a digital business right now that from the get-go had 300 million put into the fund to fund it. And being a fat cat, unfortunately, this company is not developing as fast and not producing as many digital services as their startup competitors who are hungry and who are working in garages and have absolutely no money and no resources. The necessity is mother of all invention. So this limits is often what drives us forward. Next question, Metka. Hi, Metka. Good to see you here. She says, can we conduct this successfully also virtually with participants in different countries via Skype, Zoom? And what specific should I pay attention to as facilitator? I think it's a great question. To be super honest, I've never done this virtually. But now that I've spent a year playing in the virtual space, and Metka being both a student of a foundation course in breakthrough reinvention and now a student of our certificate program, you know very well all of our virtual tests. I have to say that I see no limits around virtual use, and I would absolutely run it virtually. I just haven't done it yet, but I think absolutely it would. I would use something like Zoom because I think everyone should have a central stage with a video, and Zoom allows you to bring a team up and they would be central stage and then pull it back. So it's not just me as a talking head the way I'm right now. So I would see no problem as a virtual space. What specifically should you pay attention to? I think the biggest thing with virtual situation is energy. So I would spend more time designing a high energy points through the virtual experience. So if in a physical experience, I give my teams a lot of room to develop their presentation, and I roam through the groups, and if I have co-facilitators, we divide and mentor separate teams. Here I would actually bring people back for more often, so I wouldn't give them time like a day to do on their own. I would actually facilitate it more hands-on and bring people in and find other ways to bring the energy up, because in a virtual environment the energy tends to dissipate more easily than it is in a physical room where we're all together, right? Things happen, phones distract us. The virtual space, this focus on each other, looking into each other's eyes. For example, I'm struggling right now. If I look into the camera, which gives you an effect of looking into your eyes, I actually don't see your faces because your faces are off to the right on the little videos. So there's some limitations of a virtual environment in terms of energy focus, energy and focusing the energy. So I would focus on thinking, okay, maybe I give a small burst of brainstorming and then bring groups together and ask them to show a half-baked product, and then or give them new input or hear them one by one. But I would design the virtual experience in a way that makes us more present and more engaged more often. So that would be my thing. And also I would ask the teams to be super creative with their presentation. So perhaps they can produce a short video on their phone. Maybe they can film a movie and premiere it virtually, load it very quickly on YouTube. It's surprisingly how simple it is with one phone to film a super short movie, cut it super quickly on free software that comes with a phone, and just load it. So I would be more creative. Maybe they need to sing a song, maybe they need to play out a drama of sorts, but I would be more creative and more paid attention to the energy if we do it virtually. But I don't think there's a limit with the virtual. Ken says, any examples of how to use, Jorge says, I strongly recommend you to take a look at liberatingstructures.com. You have there 33 structures to manage groups in order to get agreement and foster participation. You can use some of the structures to apply Kill Your Company game. Absolutely, I like it. And Metka says she will try and let us know how this works. Good. Now Ken says, any examples of how to use within a small 8-person department with a long time in place that have been doing things relatively the same forever? Great question. So how I would do it, I would pair them up in the groups of 2, and I would pair up people who don't talk to each other as much, so who least know each other or least like each other or least communicate and interact. And so you have 4 groups, and I would give them a prize. So I would actually increase the competition to break the routine. So whatever breaks the routine, if you always give them prizes, don't. But if you don't, come up with other, if you always give them prize, come up with some other way to break the routine. But I actually would assume that if you know each other, you probably don't do any kind of gaming as much. So I would create a prize for the best team of some sort, and increase the competitiveness in some way, in some other way. But 4 groups, pairs, people who don't know each other much. And I would run this, specifically this, as a short exercise. Why short? You know each other for a long time. The group of 2 is very small group, so you don't have the resources for do full length or long in-depth analysis. If you've been in the same business and doing the same thing all the time, it also means you know a lot of your business. So you don't need to do as much research as new students. Let's say if we brought the external stakeholders or we brought students, they don't know anything about your business. It takes a long time for them to get into the mindset and the reality and the facts of the business. And here you can make it very very short. So I would make it something like Friday afternoon or Friday morning, or something maybe not at the beginning of the week. And Friday afternoon seems the best if they're not, if you don't have anybody who leaves early and they are stuck doing this exercise. It shouldn't be a punishment, but something that is last before weekend. So it's a fresh experience, far away from the norm, and it's something that pushes them in a different direction. And pairs of 2, 4 groups, short bursts, so something like give them an hour at most, structured presentation, and then mix up, maybe pair up 2 and 2 in 2 groups of 4, mix them up to work specifically on, okay, we identified the ways to kill the company, we identified the risks. Now, what should we do about those risks? And now they are working in 2 groups coming up with specific actions, and then you can vote collectively as a group of 8 on which actions you are starting with, and agree on the meeting where you will review the first progress made and rotate through facilitation. So different people inside this group of 8 then will have a responsibility for hosting the next meeting and next meeting. And you do progress meetings that are scheduled, that are committed to, that is all about action. I find it very important for people who've been together for a long time to break the routine, and second, to focus on quick wins, because the been there, done that mentality settles very deep with teams that have been together for a long time, that it might be exceptionally important that you have something to show as a result. Because as a, let's say, a department that's been together for many years, we become a bit desensitized, kind of numb to the idea of reinvention or transformation, because we kind of lose hope that anything real can be changed. And because of that, quick wins become very important. So I would focus more on action first, and then the second round of kill the company in, let's say, half a year, you can be much more in depth and so on. But the first one, I would do super short, all about action, focus on very actionable items, set up the first review meeting no longer than 2 weeks from this event to see the progress made, push for results, celebrate the victory, so that you gain traction and confidence that things can be changed. And even this group of old cats who've been there, done that, still can transform and learn new tricks. So Ken, I hope this helps. Any more questions or comments? I'm getting a little bit tired from speaking. I'm suffering from 5 or 6 weeks of bronchitis that moved down to my lungs from pneumonia. So I'm it's my first live event, so I'm speaking slowly and feeling a little woozy. But if there's any more question, or maybe you want a comment, or maybe you want to grab a moment on camera and speak on camera, I'm also happy to do that. Let me know. And if not, I have a last question for all of you. We have not scheduled yet the next one. Olga says both last questions and answers were super useful for me online and small groups. That is very, very good. And Ken says, thanks. This has opened up some ideas of how to use. Yeah. So I absolutely think that this works great for short meetings, for small groups. I actually think that I started doing a lot more of this myself, because I've been in facilitation or leadership development or strategy development since '94. This is my 25th year. And I feel like I'm a bit developing of my own Titanic syndrome, thinking that I know it all. So I now go back to the basics and do some of these basic exercises on myself for my own roles in companies. And I absolutely love using them now and going through the motions ourselves. So I think small groups should do this. It's not necessarily for like a group of 200 people in a room, even though we often did it with a very large setup with a few hundred people in the room. But I think it works great in a very small group that knows each other very well. And there's a question also here from David, perhaps an open forum on what lessons about reinventing do you wish you had learned earlier or less painfully? So David gave me an idea on what should be the next topic for the reinvention happy hour. And his idea is that it should be open forum on what lesson about reinventing do you wish you learned earlier or less painful. I think that's beautiful. I actually can get sign-ups for, or get few people to agree to speak in advance on that topic. And so it's not just me as a talking head, but more of us speaking, and then opened up the whole community. I love that. Anybody else? What do you think should be our next topic? So in January, we will have a reinvention happy hour somewhere in mid-January. We should schedule them as soon as our head of digital products come back from vacation. That's Anya Brown. You all know Anya. And she will be back, I think tomorrow, and we will schedule the next 2 or 3 for January, February, and March. And then, of course, we are working on the big 2020 masterclass as well, which will be like the 2019 masterclasses. So like my hottest, my newest trend watching, my like big thing that you need to know in 2020. So we're working on that because we also eyeing a decade, not only 2020, but the 20s, this decade, what should be the big things to watch. So we will do the happy hour mid-January, and then the master classes either late January or early February. So any other ideas, shoot me a message, post it here or somewhere else, and I would love to answer it and create a great happy hour. So I will also post it inside the Reinvention Society, what topics you want to discuss and what topics do you generally want to cover in 2020, because 2020 is here. And thank you guys for being here. I think we'll close. I don't see any more comments. Any more ideas on what should be? Anybody wants to get online? Should we cheer for 2020? It's our last event. I see Jorge is cheering right there. And let's see who else is cheering. And Danielle is cheering. And Olga says thank you. And Jennifer says thank you. Everyone says thank you. I raise, and David is cheering as well. I raise a glass to all of you. 2020, let it be full of health and full of joy. It's beautiful to be with all of you. Let me stop the share here. Give me a second. How do I stop the share? And Olga is, I can see Olga now. How cool is that? Let me put all of you here and let's cheer. Not many of us are on video, but you're here. Cheers to all of you. Happy 2020. Happy New Year. Marite is here. Good to see you all. Thank you for joining. I will do my best to process this video and send it your way in the next week or so, and the previous Reinvention Life as well. Thank you guys. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in 2020. Bye.